Now, more of Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio Newstalk 1180.
We are back on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio Newstalk 1180. Our guest by phone is Brad Dacus from the Pacific Justice Institute, and he will be speaking in Tehachapi on Monday at the Tehachapi Republican Women Federation for lunch. You can contact Bonnie Miller at 823-8223. He's got a number of events up there, and the final event will be Tuesday night. He'll be speaking to the Tehachapi Congress of Republicans, and the contact person there is Colleen Smur at 824-2341. Brad, Clay has a question. Since Clay and I are both insurance people, that's our real jobs, and Clay does a lot of Obamacare medical, and it's a subject that's very dear to his heart, and when he saw that was on your list of topics, it was something that Clay's been biting at the bit to talk to you about.
Well, I don't really do a lot of Obamacare, I'll guarantee you that. I'm trying to do real health care. But this is what Judge Roger Vinson in Pensacola stated. It says, "For the reason I must reluctantly conclude that Congress exceeded the bounds of its authority in passing the act with the individual mandate. Because the individual mandate is unconstitutional and not severable, the entire act must be declared void. It appears that without that particular part of the bill, there's nothing to sustain the bill itself." Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. We totally agree with that decision, and he made it. What the judge did is he referenced the part of the individual mandate which he struck down, where it said that this part of the bill is essential for the rest of the legislation. And so the judge said, on its face, it's declaring that the rest of the legislation is dependent on this. It's essential. So therefore, I strike down all of it. And it was a very well-written decision. We at Pacific Justice Institute, as you know, we have filed it to challenge this in federal court out of San Diego. Our case is now pending before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We're expecting a hearing on this in April. And we only had to do this. We had to do this because our Attorney General at the time, Governor Jerry Brown, refused to defend the people's rights here in California. So to challenge it, so that's what we did.
So once you're going to go into the Ninth Circuit Court and see what they have to say, and being a liberal state as we are, do you think you have a chance?
No comment at this time. I hope. Anyway, we have been surprised by the Ninth Circuit positively before. But one thing we know, though, is that our case is moving very fast. In fact, it's moving faster than the other ones out there. And so there's a good chance that ours will make it to the Supreme Court before the other ones. And if that happens, then the other cases will all come up at the same time, Florida, Virginia, et cetera. And so the role that we're playing, I think, most importantly, is helping to expedite it, to help ensure that we get a decision by the Supreme Court, which we believe is going to strike it down, more likely than not, before the next election. And we're fairly optimistic that we're going to see both of those accomplished.
But even the fact that this has been declared unconstitutional, it doesn't appear that the Obama administration is following the legislation. The rule of law. They're just doing whatever they want to do and continuing to implement the program.
You're absolutely right. And this administration is very unique in that it is engaged in actions that defy the oath of office and the constraints of the executive branch. This is one example. Another example I'd like to mention briefly is how he decided he arbitrarily is not going to defend the Defense of Marriage Act.
Right.
That's the job of the executive branch, the U.S. Department of Justice. I think that's a real slap in the face to American people, and it's really an act of dictatorship, not an act of a president. So, it may sound like strong language, but if you look at the definition of dictator, that is pretty much what it is, someone who doesn't respect the laws, but instead only basically does what they want to do, irrespective of the laws.
Yep.
And this is another example. The health care bill is a classic with the decision out of Florida declaring it null and void and unconstitutional.
Yeah, he's been picking and choosing. Didn't we have a similar result in Virginia recently as well?
Yes, Virginia was the same, except a little different. The Virginia judge was a little more cautious and declared the center point unconstitutional, individual mandate. It says it's unconstitutional, violation of First Amendment Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, the Commerce Clause, for the federal government to start telling people what they have to buy. But they said, you know what, as far as the other parts of this bill, we're not sure to what extent they are connected or not connected on this. We're going to leave that to the higher court. So they diffused the rest of the legislation question as part of the bill. They didn't say it was valid. They just said we're going to defer to the appellate court and the Supreme Court to make the final decision on the rest of it, and whether or not it's connected too tightly to be valid. Florida just said point blank, looking at the language, it is interwoven and interconnected and has to be declared invalid as well.
Well, there's also been two judges that said it was valid.
You're right, absolutely, and we expected that. Judges used to be attorneys. Attorneys used to go to law school. It's no accident that attorneys overwhelmingly vote Democrat and support the Democrat presidents. So it's understandable that we're going to have judges, consequently, some out there who agree with this and who are very activist and believe strongly in a very powerful, strong federal government and loosely interpret the Constitution to accommodate that. I think in the end we're going to have 5 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court that are going to disagree with that judicial activism and pull the reins of the federal government.
Well, currently it's got several insurance companies not knowing which way to go, and so most of them seem to be on the health side just following along with what the legislation says. But my question is, how do you fast-track this to the Supreme Court so we can get it behind us, one way or the other?
Well, we at Pacific Justice Institute earlier, a few months ago, actually tried that, and we're hoping that we would have them. It's very unusual for them to take it up. It has to be under emergency circumstances. The Supreme Court didn't think it met that degree of scrutiny for it to be an emergency circumstance. So they said, no, I'm sorry, we're going to have to hear it on the merits. And so that's where we're at. But this is moving fairly quickly. For us to say with a great degree of confidence that we're going to have a result probably for the next election, that's a very fast clip for our federal courts. To give you an example, in defending In God We Trust, we defend In God We Trust on our currency. The Ninth Circuit sat on it for 2 years after the case was argued. They just sat on it for 2 years before they finally came down with their decision. So this healthcare bill litigation is moving very quickly, relatively speaking.
We are having a conversation with Brad Dacus from the Pacific Justice Institute. Brad, but the Ninth Circuit in the God We Trust case ended up agreeing with you, which kind of blew me away. I couldn't believe that.
Oh yeah, it was a great success. The U.S. Supreme Court just recently said they're not going to challenge it, so that's a wonderful victory. And then we had another huge victory that came down from the Ninth Circuit recently, where we at Pacific Justice Institute defended the rights of churches to build, grow, and expand against hostile local governments like City of San Leandro. A sweeping victory that case was, and gives incredible empowerment to religious institutions in the Ninth Circuit. So we've seen some incredible successes. In fact, we're going to be highlighting a number of these cases at our upcoming April 2nd Celebration of Justice event. It's going to be at the Grand Disneyland Hotel. We're flying in Dick Morris to speak. It's going to be a fantastic, extravagant gala event. And if people in your audience are interested in more information, they can go to our webpage at pacificjustice.org because we're going to talk a lot about these cases at that event as well.
Great. I saw that, and that looked really interesting.
Mm-hmm. We may just show up. We may just surprise you, Brad.
Yeah, we're going to be your guests, Brad.
Our guests. Well, that's great. You get a ticket, both of you, and I'll both treat you as my guest.
I appreciate that. We may surprise you. Brad, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to have you back for an hour next time, okay?
Oh, it's my joy and delight. I appreciate you guys a lot. You're doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. I'm going to give a couple quick phone numbers. For Monday's event, Bonnie Miller, 823-8223. Tuesday night's event, Colleen Smur, 824-2341. And don't forget us next Saturday. We've got Gary Bernstein on, who's the CIA agent in Afghanistan after 9/11. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in 167 hours on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio Newstalk 1180.